The Variant Consortium's observation post on Luna had remained undetected for 43 Earth years, hidden beneath the regolith of the far side. Its crystalline sensors monitored every broadcast, every launch, and every minor atmospheric fluctuation of the blue planet that hung permanently beyond its horizon. The post's AI compiled reports that made most species in the galaxy shudder. Constant warfare, rapidly advancing technology, and a population that not only survived but thrived in conditions that would kill most sentient beings. Commander Nexel, newly appointed to oversee Earth surveillance, stared at the latest readings with all four of her eyes. The humans had just launched another spacecraft, this one aimed directly at the observation post's quadrant of Luna. It wasn't supposed to happen for at least another decade. The consortium's predictive models had been clear about that. Yet here they were, watching a primitive but surprisingly effective craft making its way through the void. How did they achieve this level of propulsion technology so quickly? She wondered aloud, her scales shifting from their normal blue to a worried green. The last assessment suggested they were at least 15 years away from efficient antimatter containment. Her second-in-command, Riven, pulled up the historical data streams. They improvised. Commander. Instead of following the standard development path, they combined three theoretically incompatible technologies. It shouldn't work, but somehow they've made it stable. The improvisational nature of human advancement had always troubled the consortium. Species were supposed to follow predictable technological paths, building upon each previous discovery in an orderly fashion. Humans, however, seemed to delight in combining disparate elements in ways that defied conventional scientific wisdom. The approaching spacecraft carried what the humans called their Artemis Advanced Survey Team. Its stated mission was to establish a permanent research base on Luna's far side, exactly where the consortium had hidden their most sophisticated monitoring equipment. We need to notify Central Command, Nexel decided, her scales now pulsing with bands of anxious yellow. The containment protocol has failed. We can no longer guarantee our presence will remain undetected. But before Riven could transmit the message, their sensors detected something unprecedented. The human craft was executing a maneuver that their systems couldn't even classify. It was as if the humans had found a way to bend not just space, but the very laws of physics that the consortium had built their civilization upon. Impossible, Riven whispered, his tendrils coiling in distress. They're using gravitational fluctuations as propulsion waves. The energy requirements alone should tear their primitive craft apart. Commander Nexel watched as the human vessel surfed what could only be described as a wave of warped spacetime, covering distance in a way that violated at least three fundamental laws of physics. The worst part was that the humans had achieved this not through careful, methodical research, but through what appeared to be a series of educated guesses and reckless experiments. They're not just advancing faster than predicted, Nexel realized, her scales blanching to white. They're advancing in ways we never imagined possible. The containment protocol isn't just failing, it was fundamentally flawed from the start. The observation post's sensors began picking up direct communications from the approaching vessel. The humans were excited, chattering among themselves about anomalous readings and unexpected opportunities. They hadn't spotted the consortium's base yet, but their instruments had detected something that their science told them shouldn't exist. Instead of responding with fear or caution, the humans were enthusiastic about the discovery. Their communications revealed not just curiosity, but an almost predatory eagerness to uncover new mysteries. "Listen to them," Riven said, his voice trembling slightly. "They're not afraid of what they might find. They're hoping to find something that challenges their understanding of reality." Commander Nexel made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. "Prepare for emergency evacuation," she ordered. "But first, transmit everything we have to Central Command. They need to understand what we're dealing with." As the observation team began their hasty withdrawal, Nexel composed the final report herself. "The species designated human cannot be contained or controlled through conventional means," she wrote. "They don't just survive in their Deathworld environment. They have been shaped by it into something unprecedented, Their technological development follows no known pattern. Their problem-solving abilities defy predictive models, and their response to adversity is to become stronger. She paused, watching the human craft execute another impossible maneuver, before adding her final assessment. The consortium's assumption that Earth's hostile environment would limit human development was fundamentally flawed. Instead, it has created a species that views the impossible as simply another challenge to overcome. Recommendation: immediate reclassification of humanity as a Class X civilization, not for their danger to others, but for their potential to revolutionize everything. We think we know about the limits of possibility. As the consortium personnel abandoned their hidden base, the humans drew ever closer to their first real contact with galactic civilization. They had no way of knowing that their seemingly simple lunar mission was about to thrust them onto an interstellar stage, or that their reputation as Deathworld survivors was about to become their greatest diplomatic asset. The Varian Consortium's central command erupted into chaos as Commander Nexel's final report reached them. The massive crystalline chamber, usually a model of order and efficiency, now pulsed with the agitated colors of hundreds of distressed representatives. The emergency session had been called within moments of the report's arrival, marking the first time in 3 centuries that the command had assembled with such urgency. High Administrator Vex, their crystalline form glowing with deep purple concern, addressed the assembly. The Earth observation post's data cannot be disputed. This species has achieved what our scientists deemed impossible, and they did it by accident. Holoprojections filled the chamber, showing humans operating in environments that should have killed them instantly. They worked in deep-sea pressures, volcanic temperatures, and radioactive zones. More disturbing were the recordings of their extreme sports, activities where they deliberately sought out deadly conditions for entertainment. Their classification as a Deathworld species was meant to be a warning to them, declared Science Director Mira, her tentacles writhing in agitation. Instead, they turned it into an advantage. Look at this. The central hologram shifted to display a human research station in Antarctica. The assembled representatives watched in horror as humans casually went about their work in temperatures that would shatter most species' molecular bonds. They didn't just survive. They made jokes about the weather. Their environmental adaptability exceeds anything in our records, Mira continued. But it's their problem-solving approach that truly sets them apart. They don't follow logical progression. They jump tracks, combine incompatible theories, and somehow make them work. Another display showed human scientists celebrating after a failed experiment produced unexpected results. Instead of discarding the failure, they had investigated why it failed and discovered an entirely new branch of physics, one that the consortium scientists had dismissed as theoretically impossible centuries ago. They're not bound by our limitations because they don't believe in limitations, High Administrator Vex observed. Their Deathworld didn't restrict their development. It accelerated it. Every environmental challenge became an opportunity for innovation. The chamber's mood shifted from panic to something more complex as the implications sank in. A species that could turn deadly conditions into advantages, that could make the impossible possible through sheer determination and creativity, couldn't simply be contained or ignored. There's more, announced Security Director Krell, their metallic surfaces reflecting the chamber's shifting lights. We've detected increased activity in the Nexus Void. The chamber fell silent. The Nexus Void, a region of space where normal physics broke down, had been cordoned off for millennia. No species had found a way to navigate or study it safely. The humans, Krell continued, have already theorized its existence. They call it the quantum foam barrier, and they're developing technologies to explore it. Their theories about its nature, developed without any direct observation, are more advanced than our understanding after thousands of years of study. High Administrator Vex's crystalline form pulsed with decision. We must revise our approach. Earth's classification as a Deathworld remains accurate, but not for the reasons we originally assumed. They are not trapped by their harsh environment. They are empowered by it. The assembly stirred uneasily as Vex continued. Consider, Every challenge we thought would limit them has instead driven them to exceed our understanding of what's possible. They don't just survive their death world. They've learned to thrive in conditions that we considered uninhabitable. And now, they're about to discover they're not alone in the galaxy. Science director Mira's displays showed the human vessel continuing its approach to the abandoned observation post. They'll find our technology, she noted. And based on their pattern of advancement, they won't just study it, they'll improve it. Then we must make a choice, Vex declared. Do we continue our policy of containment, knowing it will ultimately fail? Or do we acknowledge that our classification system itself needs to be reconsidered? The debate that followed was intense, but ultimately, the evidence was undeniable. Humanity's classification would remain Deathworld, but with a crucial amendment. They would be designated as the first evolutionary Deathworld species, a civilization that had not merely survived their harsh environment, but had been fundamentally shaped by it into something unprecedented. As the assembly concluded, High Administrator Vex made one final observation. We thought their world would contain them, limit them. Instead, it has created a species that treats the impossible as merely improbable, and improbable as a challenge to be overcome. The question is no longer how to contain them. It's how to prepare for their inevitable emergence onto the galactic stage. The chamber's lights dimmed as the representatives departed, each lost in thought about the implications of their discovery. On Earth, unaware of the profound impact they had just had on galactic politics, humanity continued pushing boundaries, breaking rules, and redefining what was possible. Their first official contact with the wider galaxy was approaching, and nothing in the consortium's vast history had prepared them for what was to come. The crisis began in the Nexus Void. What the consortium had cordoned off for millennia was expanding, threatening to engulf inhabited systems. The physics-warping properties that had made the region impossible to study were now becoming impossible to ignore. As space itself began to unravel at the edges of known civilization, the galaxy's finest minds found themselves facing a problem they couldn't solve through conventional means. Dr. Elena Santos stood before the emergency session of the consortium's scientific council, her presence a stark reminder of how quickly things had changed. Just 6 months after humanity's discovery of the abandoned lunar base, she had become Earth's leading representative in galactic affairs. The council chamber, designed for species from across the galaxy, somehow felt small with the weight of the crisis hanging over them. "Your models are elegant," Elena said, studying the holographic projections of the void's expansion. "But you're trying to solve this using stable physics in a region where physics itself is breaking down. We need to think differently." Science director Mira's tentacles coiled in frustration. "The mathematics are clear. The void's expansion follows predictable patterns." "Predictable until they're not," Elena interrupted, pulling up her own data. "Look at these variance spikes. The void isn't just expanding, it's evolving. It's like a living system finding new ways to propagate itself." The council stirred uneasily. The idea of treating a spatial anomaly as a biological system was exactly the kind of unconventional thinking that made humans both fascinating and disturbing to the consortium. But Elena wasn't finished. "We've seen something similar on Earth," she continued. "There's a fungus in our Chernobyl exclusion zone that actually feeds on radiation. When we first discovered it, it contradicted everything we thought we knew about life's fundamental requirements. But there it was, turning what should have been deadly into a source of energy." High Administrator Vex's crystalline form pulsed with interest. "You suggest we treat the void as a form of life. I suggest we stop trying to fight it with conventional physics and start trying to understand its metabolism." Elena replied. "Every system, no matter how chaotic it appears, has patterns. We just need to look at them the right way." The human scientist pulled up new data, this time showing the results of experiments her team had been conducting in secret. They had been deliberately creating miniature physics anomalies in controlled environments, studying not how to prevent them, but how they behaved and what they consumed. Your civilizations have spent millennia avoiding regions where physics breaks down, Alina explained. We've spent our entire history living on a planet that constantly tries to kill us. We learned to study the deadly, to understand it, even to use it. The void isn't just breaking physics, it's creating new rules. We need to learn those rules. The council chamber erupted in debate. The idea of intentionally studying physics anomalies rather than containing them went against thousands of years of established protocol. But as the void continued to expand, threatening more systems, they were running out of options. "Show us," High Administrator Vex commanded, their crystalline form now glowing with decisive purpose. The next few weeks saw an unprecedented collaboration. Human scientists, accustomed to working in Earth's most hostile environments, led expeditions to the edge of the void. They brought with them techniques and technologies that seemed primitive to the consortium, but were perfectly adapted for surviving in chaotic conditions. "See here," Alina pointed out during one observation session. "The void's boundary isn't just expanding randomly. It's following paths of least resistance, just like water flowing downhill. But instead of flowing through physical space, it's flowing through probability spaces." The breakthrough came when they stopped trying to prevent the void's expansion and instead began to guide it. Using principles derived from studying Earth's most extreme environments, they developed a way to create probability channels, controlled paths where the void's energy could flow harmlessly into uninhabited regions of space. "It's like controlled burning to prevent forest fires," Alina explained to the astonished council. "Sometimes the best way to prevent destruction is to work with the force trying to destroy you." The implementation wasn't perfect. Several uninhabited systems were lost as they refined the technique. But for the first time since the crisis began, they had a working solution, one that came not from advanced technology or complex mathematics, but from humanity's experience with surviving in hostile conditions. As the immediate crisis subsided, High Administrator Vex made an unprecedented announcement. The consortium hereby establishes a new division, the Department of Hostile Environment Adaptation. Its leadership will be shared between our species, but its primary advisors will be human. Alina couldn't help but smile at the irony. Humanity's classification as a Deathworld species had been intended as a warning label. Instead, it had become their greatest qualification for helping the galaxy face its challenges. "There's something else you should know," she told the council as the session concluded. "Those probability channels we created. Our theoretical physics team thinks they might be more than just safety valves. They might be the key to stable faster than light travel." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Once again, humanity's approach to solving a crisis had opened up possibilities that the consortium had never imagined. Their Deathworld origins hadn't just helped them survive. They had given them the tools to help the galaxy thrive. The consortium's Academy of Sciences had stood unchanged for 10,000 years. Its crystalline spires had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, the discovery of fundamental laws, and the gradual expansion of galactic knowledge. But it had never seen anything quite like this. Dr. Marcus Chen, Earth's newly appointed science liaison, stood in the center of the Academy's grand amphitheater, surrounded by holographic displays of what he called probability surfing. Around him, representatives from 100 species watched with a mixture of horror and fascination as he demonstrated how humans had learned to navigate the channels they'd created to contain the void's expansion. "The key," Marcus explained, "isn't to fight the chaos, it's to ride it. Think of it like surfing a wave. You don't try to stop the ocean. You work with its energy to go where you want to go." Science Director Mira's tentacles twisted in theoretical distress. "But the mathematical uncertainties are exactly what make it work," Marcus interrupted, adjusting the holographic display. "We've been running simulations based on Earth's weather patterns. Our planet's atmosphere is a chaos system too, but we learned to predict it well enough to survive. The void channels operate on similar principles, just at a quantum level." The display showed a small probe entering one of the probability channels. Instead of being torn apart by the physics-defying forces within, it accelerated smoothly along the channel's length, covering light-years of distance in minutes. "Impossible," whispered one of the senior theorists, their crystalline form flickering with disbelief. "The energy requirements alone are negligible," Marcus said, bringing up another display. "Because we're not fighting the channel's natural flow. We're essentially surfing down a probability gradient. The channel does most of the work. We just need to stay on the wave." The implications were staggering. The channels humans had created to save the galaxy from the void's expansion had accidentally become the fastest known method of interstellar travel. But more than that, they represented a fundamental shift in how the galaxy approached problems. "You have to understand," Marcus continued, his excitement evident, "this isn't just about faster travel. It's about rethinking everything we assume is impossible. The void wasn't a threat to be contained. It was an opportunity we hadn't recognized." In the months that followed, humanity's influence spread through the consortium like a benevolent virus. Earth's universities began accepting students from other species, teaching them not just technology, but a new way of thinking. The sight of crystalline beings learning to surf probability waves alongside humans became increasingly common. The Academy's archives were filled with new papers, each one challenging long-held assumptions about what was possible. Humanity's tendency to ask, "Why not?" instead of simply accepting established limitations began to infect even the most conservative species. High Administrator Vex found themselves presiding over a transformation they hadn't anticipated. They're not just sharing technology, they observed during a private session with the Council. They're sharing their perspective, their way of approaching problems. And it's changing us. The evidence was everywhere. A group of Trilaxian engineers, inspired by human extreme sports, had developed new ways to stabilize their crystalline structures in high-stress environments. Quantum physicists from the hegemony were collaborating with human meteorologists to better understand chaos theory's applications in space-time manipulation. But perhaps most surprisingly, the Deathworld classification that had once been meant to quarantine humanity had become a mark of distinction. Species began sending their brightest minds to Earth, not despite its harsh conditions, but because of them. "Your planet is trying to kill you every day," remarked a visiting Nexian scholar. "And instead of hiding from it, you learn from it. Every disaster becomes a lesson, every challenge an opportunity. We've been so focused on creating perfect environments that we forgot how adaptation drives innovation." The Academy itself underwent a transformation. New wings were added to study what humans called extreme condition physics, the behavior of natural laws under conditions that the consortium had previously considered too dangerous to investigate. The results were revolutionary. Marcus stood in his new laboratory, watching a team of mixed species working on what they called quantum weather prediction, using Earth's atmospheric modeling techniques to predict and navigate probability channels. The sight would have been unthinkable just a year ago. "We're not just breaking rules anymore," he told the visiting delegation. "We're writing new ones. The galaxy isn't divided into safe and dangerous zones. It's all one big laboratory. And everything, even the things that can kill you, has something to teach us." A junior researcher, their crystalline form glowing with excitement, approached with new data. They had successfully predicted the formation of a new probability channel using models based on Earth's hurricane patterns. But more than that, they had found a way to intentionally create new channels. "That's the real breakthrough," Marcus explained to the astonished observers. "We're not just using what's there. We're learning to shape it. The same principles that let us survive on Earth are letting us reshape the very fabric of space-time." As he spoke, another test probe successfully navigated a newly created channel, emerging precisely at its intended destination. The impossible had become routine, and a routine was becoming a new foundation for galactic civilization. The Academy's oldest archive received a new entry that day. It read simply, "The classification of Earth as a death world was correct, but our understanding of what that meant was wrong." They are not prisoners of their harsh environment. They are its students. And now, they are becoming our teachers. 5 years after humanity's first contact with the consortium, the galaxy had changed in ways that no predictive model could have anticipated. The grand chamber of the Galactic Assembly, once a symbol of unchanging order, now pulsed with energy as representatives from across known space gathered for a historic announcement. High Administrator Vex, their crystalline form radiating with multifaceted purpose, addressed the assembled species. Today, we formally recognize what many of us have already understood. Our traditional classification system for civilizations requires fundamental revision. The massive holographic displays showed images of Earth, not just its challenges and dangers, but the way its inhabitants had turned those very dangers into opportunities. Footage of humans diving in deep ocean trenches played alongside data showing how those same techniques had led to breakthroughs in void channel navigation. When we first classified Earth as a death world, Vex continued, we believed we were identifying a limitation. Instead, we were witnessing the crucible that forged humanity's greatest strength, their ability to transform obstacles into advantages. Dr. Sarah Chen, now Earth's ambassador to the consortium, stepped forward. The chamber's adaptive environment systems automatically adjusted to Earth normal conditions in her vicinity, a technology developed through collaboration between human environmental engineers and consortium biotechnicians. 5 years ago, Sarah began, you thought our world's hostile conditions had trapped us. Today, those same conditions have helped us open up the galaxy. Every challenge Earth threw at us taught us something valuable. We learned to predict chaos from our storms, to adapt to extremes from our climate, and to embrace change from our ever-shifting environment. The displays shifted to show the network of probability channels that now connected the galaxy. What had begun as a desperate measure to contain the void's expansion had evolved into the most efficient transportation system ever created. Ships surfed through controlled chaos, using principles derived from Earth's weather patterns to navigate faster than light. But the real breakthrough, Sarah continued, wasn't technological. It was philosophical. We showed the galaxy that challenges aren't limits, they're opportunities. That chaos isn't just disorder. It's a complex order we haven't yet understood. That adaptation isn't just about survival. It's about evolution. The assembly watched as new data streamed across the displays. Species that had once avoided all risk were now establishing research stations in extreme environments. The principles learned from Earth's harsh conditions were being applied across countless fields, from medicine to space exploration. The term Deathworld suggested a place where life struggles to survive, Vex observed. But Earth showed us that struggle itself is a catalyst for advancement. Every species that has adopted Earth's adaptive approaches has made unprecedented progress. The evidence was undeniable. The Trilaxians had revolutionized their crystal-based technology by studying Earth's geological processes. The hegemony had transformed their understanding of quantum mechanics by applying principles derived from Earth's atmospheric dynamics. Even the void itself was now being studied as a source of new possibilities, rather than a threat to be contained. Therefore, Vex announced, their form glowing with formal authority, we hereby establish a new classification, Crucible World. These are planets whose challenging conditions don't limit their inhabitants, but rather forge them into something extraordinary. Earth will be the first to receive this designation. The chamber erupted in harmonious acknowledgement, each species expressing approval in their own way. But Sarah wasn't finished. She activated one final display, showing a recent discovery that human scientists had made while studying the void channels. We found something remarkable, she said. The channels we created don't just connect different points in space, they're actually generating new physical possibilities. The very act of surfing through them is creating new pathways, new potentials. The galaxy isn't just becoming more connected, it's evolving. The implications stunned the assembly. The channels weren't just a transportation system. They were literally reshaping the fabric of reality, creating new possibilities that neither humans nor the consortium had imagined. What had begun as a desperate measure to survive had become a force for universal evolution. This is humanity's true gift to the galaxy, Sarah concluded. Not just the technology to survive, but the vision to see opportunities in our greatest challenges. We didn't just adapt to our death world. We learned from it. And now, together, we're using those lessons to transform the galaxy itself. As the assembly session concluded, High Administrator Vex made one final observation. The universe contains countless wonders, they noted, but perhaps the greatest wonder is this, that a species forged in the crucible of what we thought was a death world would teach us not to fear the harsh and hostile, but to embrace it as a teacher. The galaxy is no longer divided into safe and dangerous spaces. It is all one great frontier, waiting to be explored. The new era that began that day would be remembered not as the time when humanity joined galactic civilization, but as the moment when galactic civilization learned to see the universe through human eyes, as a place where every challenge was an opportunity, every danger a potential advantage, and every limit simply a boundary waiting to be transcended. The Death World classification that had once been meant to warn others away from Earth had become a badge of honor, a recognition that the harshest conditions often produce the most remarkable results. And as humanity continued to share its unique perspective with the galaxy, the distinction between hostile and hospitable environments began to fade, replaced by a new understanding that adaptation, innovation, and the courage to face challenges head-on were the true measures of a civilization's potential.